Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Alrighty, so Brat Summer has officially come to an end, and it is now time to talk about everything that I've read over the past few months. So let's just get into it, but also, please do all of the algorithm things, liking, subscribing, commenting, all of that. Alright, anyway, let's talk about some books now. So starting off in June, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This adult romance slash women's fiction is about this lady who goes on this yearly vacation trip with all of her friends, and unfortunately, that means being around her ex-fiancé for a week because he's also a part of their whole friend group. During the vacation, her and her ex start to rekindle things, and there are also a lot of underlying tensions in the friend group that need to be worked out, because everyone is getting older and their lives are changing from what they once were when everyone first met. This is very much a second chance romance mixed with found family slash coming of age in your 30s kind of book. And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I did. I read this because I do want to make like an Emily Henry video where I just like read all of her recent books over the last few years that she's like really known for. So I'm currently in the middle working through that, and there will be another book from her on this list towards the end. But yeah. Anyway, this was a very just pleasant and relaxing book. That's honestly the best word to describe this book, is just relaxing. Like, I wasn't ever like jumping out of my seat to hear what was going to happen next, but I was also never bored either. I was just like, going with the flow and vibing and curious to see where things were going to go. All 6 of the people in this friend group were pleasant, no one was annoying or irritating. The life lesson of, as we get older, our lives change and things won't be the same as when we were young, but we can still be close and nice, and, we can still be there for each other in each other's lives. That's a whole nice message. I really do like that. The second chance thing with Harriet and Wynne was well done, I think, with them initially, like, really hating each other, but then slowly over the course of the book coming back to each other and working out their issues that they had, that led to their downfall. And I will say, I also really didn't agree with Harriet's big choice in the resolution of this book, but hey, that's okay. Like, I don't need to agree with every single choice a character makes to enjoy them or enjoy the story. But yeah, overall, I really did like my time with this book. It's not a favorite of the year by any means, but it's also not a most hated of the year by any means. It was just pleasant and relaxing. You could even say it was a happy place. Sorry, I had to make the pun. I'm sorry, I did. Moving right along, we have Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This YA fantasy is the second book in the Six of Crows duology. It follows this group of misfits, Kaz, Inej, Jesper, Wylan, Nina, and Mateus, as they work to settle the score and get revenge on the guy who hired them in the last book to do like the big heist of the last book, but that guy like screwed them over at the very last minute. So now they are trying to like plan and get their revenge on him for doing them dirty at the end of the last book. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this, honestly. I loved it a lot more than the first book, to be quite honest. I don't know if it's my favorite in the Grishaverse so far. Like, it's like neck and neck with Ruin and Rising for me. Like, those two books I absolutely do love. There's all kinds of like different heists in this one compared to the first one where there's only like the one major one. And I've really enjoyed following the crew throughout all of these different heists, especially the like last big hurrah one in the third act. The characters also like really grew on me on this one. Like, I actually didn't really mind all of the mental monologue and drawn out backstory flashbacks like I did in the first one. Like in the first one, when the characters were like going on and on and on about, oh, this is what my life was like before all this stuff is going on now. Like in the first book when they were doing that, I was like, okay, hurry up. Thank you. Next. Thank you, next. But in this one, when they were doing that, I was actually like, okay, I'm here. I'm tuned in. I'm listening. Tell me more. Tell me more about your tragic backstory. I'm here for it. And I also felt like all 6 of the main characters had, this is going to be controversial for one of them, all 6 of them had a satisfying ending to their arcs, and I do think most of them got what they deserved. I don't, certain one, even though I hated him in the first one, I don't know if he got exactly what he deserved. I'm not sure if he exactly deserved what happened to him in the last little bit of this book. But even still, it was still a satisfying resolution. If you know, you know, I'm not spoiling anything. But, like, yeah, I really did like all of the characters' endings, and I felt like it was very satisfying. I know Lee Bardugo has talked about, like, she'll probably, at some point in the future, do a third book, but honestly, if she didn't, no big deal. All of the arcs, all of the journey, and everything ended pretty well, honestly, here. I also really liked Nina's heartrending powers evolving into, like, Grim Reaper powers after being drugged and going, like, Super Saiyan in the last book with the whole Jorda Param drug thing that you had to take. And reading off my script here, when I wrote this back in June, I said I was very interested to know what Lee does with that whole thing of, like, Nina's powers evolving and shifting to, like, Grim Reaper powers and whatever. I was curious to know what she would do with that in the King of Scars book. We will talk about King of Scars later. But spoiler alert, I actually really liked what she did with Nina's powers in King of Scars. I really, really did. I thought she made good use of her, like, I can speak to the dead, and I can summon and raise the dead for, like, an army, whatever, kind of powers. If I sound kind of rambling, it's 1:30 in the morning, almost 2 in the morning, and this is the only time that I have to film this video, so sorry, I'm a little bit out of it, but oh well. Anyway, the only thing that I will say is that I felt like the whole thing about, like, the Shu hunting down Grisha with metal benders or whatever was just kind of thrown in there and never really dealt with in, like, a satisfying way. Same with King of Scars, too. Like, that whole, like, Shu hunting down Grisha with metal benders thing comes back in the King of Scars thing. I haven't read Rule of Wolves yet, but it comes back in King of Scars, and I didn't really think it was done that well in King of Scars either. So I'm not really sure what Lee does with it in Rule of Wolves, but I hope she does something with it, because so far in Crooked Kingdom and King of Scars, it feels pretty thrown in. Like, specifically talking about Crooked Kingdom, we introduced this major threat that could possibly get Nina and Jesper kidnapped, drugged, and killed, and we mention it from time to time, but we never really do anything with it, and eventually the problem just, like, went away on its own. But other than that, I absolutely love this book. Like, I really did. I really, really did. Moving right along into July, we have Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I'll be honest, I've read the description several times, and, like, both in the book itself and on Goodreads and just Googling it in general, I cannot tell you what this book is about. I think it's pretty much Romeo and Juliet in space with an interplanetary war. That's basically what I think it is, but don't quote me on that, because I really can't tell you what it's about. So with that, that doesn't bode well for my rating, and if you thought that I was going to say this is a DNF, you were absolutely correct. This was a DNF. I'm gonna be so honest, y'all, this was the fastest I have ever DNF'd a book. Like, I didn't even get 10 pages in before I said it wasn't for me. I think I was on, like, page 8 specifically, when I was like, nope, I've been reading it for a few minutes, maybe like 30 minutes. I can't. Nope, it's not for me. Now, because of that, I'm not going to say whether this is a good book or not, because I don't know. Like, I really don't know. I read like 1% of it. How can I determine if a book is good or bad if, I've only read 1% of it? All I can tell you is that it just wasn't for me. All I can really say is that the writing was frustrating me because I could not tell what a certain character's relation to the rest of the main boy's family was. Like, first it seemed like this sissy lady was the, like, guy's big sister, then it read like she was his aunt, then it read like she was the big sister again, and then it read like she was the aunt again, and I just couldn't tell. And because the opening scene was not really gripping me, I just kept focusing on trying to, like, figure out if the Sissy character, C-I-S-I, by the way, that's how you spell her name. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her, but that's how I pronounce her. Like, I was trying to figure out if she was the sister or the aunt, and that whole thing was just heavily taking away my attention away from what I should have been focusing on. So, like, on page 8, I just said, heck with it, I'm done. We're done. And, like, skimmed the rest of the chapter along with, like, part of the main girl's first chapter, because, it's broken into dual POV. So I was trying to, like, skim her opening chapter to see if there was anything interesting, to be like, okay, maybe I can just skip over the boys' chapters and just read from the girl's perspective, blah, 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 blah. No, nothing interesting jumped out at me when I was trying to, like, find something from the girl's POV to hold on to, so there was just really nothing in this book for me. There really wasn't, and Like I said, I'm not going to say whether this one is a good or bad book, because I really don't know. But yeah, it just wasn't for me. But at least I can put my mind to ease finally, because I have had this on my bookshelf for years. Since like 2017, 2018, I got it as a Christmas present, and I just have never gotten around to it. And I said this year is going to be the year that I try it. I'm going to try to attempt to get to this book. I tried it, I tried to get through it, but now I can finally put my mind at ease and not have to worry about getting through this book anymore. Next up, we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is an adult romance reimagining the story of the Iliad. That's where the official description of this book ends, but if you're like me and you didn't have to study the Iliad and all the Greek mythology stuff in school, you probably need a little bit more context for what this book is. So it's about these two guys, Patroclus, a former prince banished because his father hates him, and Achilles, a demigod training to become the greatest warrior of all time because that is his prophesized fate. And the deep bond that they share throughout the years of growing up together from the time that they were kids all the way to their adulthood, forming bonds of friendship and ever-growing romantic feelings for one another. Don't ask me how much of this is in line with like canon Greek mythos. I don't know, and I don't really care. But I gave this one a 5 out of 5, and it is one of my favorite books of the year. Maybe my favorite book of the year, honestly. Okay, now first of all, we have to establish why I even picked up this book in the first place, because I am not a Greek myth head at all. Like I said, I never had to read it or study it in high school or middle school. I never went through a phase of wanting to, like, learn all about the Greek mythos and everything. Like, I've never been interested in Greek mythos. So why the heck did I pick up a book all about a Greek mythos? Well... Okay, so if you've been here for a minute, you absolutely know that I absolutely adore Red, White, and Royal Blue. Both the book and the movie. Now, a lot of the fans in that fandom like to fan cast the main leads of the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie, Tezcah Perez and Nicholas Galitzine. A lot of the fans like to fan cast them as the leads for like a hopeful adaptation of A Song of Achilles. So I was like, okay, where the fuck is this love for A Song of Achilles coming from? Why do you all love this book so much? Why do you want our men to play Patroclus and Achilles so much? Like, I'm so confused. I need more context. I'm gonna go read this book. Like, it's just so that I can understand what all the love is about. And yes, I understand the love at this point. Okay, so that's why I read this book. Now, on to my thoughts. We have a lot of them. Strap in. First of all, if you say anything bad about this book, I will be your sleep paralysis demon for the next, 28 years. Period. End of discussion. Second of all, my god, the ending broke me. But we'll talk a little bit about that later. Let's talk about all the other stuff that I liked about this book. I absolutely love Patroclus and Achilles to pieces. Even if they are assholes at times, like, they're my assholes. I like them. All the side characters, meh. Mostly just names, honestly, blending together. Like, I really could not tell who was who in the side character department for the most part. All I know is that I like the centaur guy that they trained with for a few years when they were teenagers, and also Briseis? Briseis' mother. Especially at the end, after Patroclus died, and she, fully told Achilles off, and was like, your bride is the only reason your man died, and honestly, he was way too good for you anyway, so suck it, bitch. I was like, you, Miss Ma'am, in this society where women have no rights, you are going to stand up for not only yourself, but also your best friend against a demigod? Against a demigod who could, not just the demigod, but the warrior demigod who is known for being able to kill anyone that he comes across. You're gonna tell him off? Oh, your mother. You're a baddie. She is a baddie. I'm sorry, I absolutely love Briseis. Also, during the war, when Patroclus was in, his house husband era, hanging out with the girls all day long and making besties and friendship bracelets with everyone, it was cute. I liked it. The melodrama at times in this book was so juicy and soap opera-y. Everything that happened with the baby... Ooh, telenovela energy. Big telenovela energy when it came to everything that happened with that fuck-ass grandchild. But that also brings me to Achilles' mom, Theseus, and I want to drag that mermaid woman, because she just confused me, and she really got on my nerves, honestly. First of all, Theseus is a homophobic bitch, so fuck her. But more so, I was not really following her logic with the whole, like, forcing Achilles to breed offspring thing. Because, like, here's the thing. She's a victim of sexual assault. That's how Achilles was made to begin with. Okay, so we following that? So you know firsthand the horror and trauma that comes with such an experience, Miss Theseus. Like, you know firsthand how traumatizing sexual assault is. Why then would you force your son to sleep with that Lady D lady? I forgot what her name is, but I know her name starts with a D. Why would you force your son to sleep with that Lady D woman twice, mind you, and get her pregnant, knowing full well he neither wanted kids nor wanted to sleep with that woman? Why would you force him to do that, knowing full well the trauma that sexual assault causes? Because you went through that yourself. Why would you want to put him through that kind of trauma too? Where was the logic in that, Miss Theseus? I wasn't following your logic. And then Theseus insists on taking the grandkid as soon as he's weaned to raise him under the sea, but she doesn't even do that. Cause later on, when the demigod grandson is 12 and joins the army, we find out Theseus just threw him onto a bunch of mermaid nannies, and also has him raised in a way where, like, he's a raging homophobic bigot who also hates women. And then after the war, she admits to Patroclus' ghost that the grandson was a piece of shit that got what he deserved when someone murdered him. Like, I fucking loved when it was said that someone murdered the grandson. I was celebrating that too, honestly. So, you know, like, what was the point of all this? Like, what was the point of all this behavior, Miss Theseus? Clown behavior. Absolute clown behavior from the mermaid. Theseus the whole time should have just minded her own business and let her son be a bottom in peace. Truly, like, mind your business. Mind your business, Miss Ma'am. But let's move on to the ending that left me in tears. Now, like I said, I'm not into Greek mythology. I never read the Iliad. I didn't know how it ended or anything when I went into this. Shocking as it may be, I really didn't know what it was about. I didn't know how it ended, blah, 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 blah. So all of that to say, girl, the last, like, 2 or 3 hours, it broke me. I was left sobbing. When Achilles had his pride wounded and wouldn't go to war, so Patroclus went out there and tried to fight in his place, as he was riding off in the chariot into battle, I was like, this is the last time they're ever going to see each other alive, isn't it? This is the last time that they're going to see each other alive, isn't it? And I was right. Unfortunately. I unfortunately was correct. And then Patroclus died and had to watch Achilles fight in grief-stricken revenge and eventually died in battle too. But then Patroclus' spirit couldn't rest because he couldn't find Achilles' spirit because their urns were kept in 2 different burial places for a long time. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, what the hell? What the hell? No. How can this be a romance and not a tragedy? They have to end up together in the end. That's how you do a romance. This can't be a romance if they don't end up together in the end. Like, what do you mean that they're separated? What do you mean their ghosts are separated? Okay, they're gonna end up together, right? And we kept going and going, and no one was reuniting the urns, cause Achilles' fuck-ass son that no one wanted or liked was like, ugh, my dad's not an F slur, and I don't give a fuck what he wanted. I'm not putting that man's urn next to his, blah, 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 blah. And then the grandson got murdered, and I rejoiced. But even still, no one was putting their urns together, so their spirits couldn't find each other. And then the entire army left without doing so, without uniting the urns. And I was freaking out, because, like, well, who the fuck is gonna right this wrong? Like, who the fuck is gonna unite the urns now? There's nobody left to reunite their spirits. We can't end with them apart. What are we doing? Please help! Send help! And then the Little Mermaid Theseus kept visiting Achilles' tomb and ignoring the fuck out of Patroclus' pleadings to reunite them, and was just like, is that the wind or something? Like, I don't hear anything. Is that the calls of agony from some peasant top that I don't like? I don't know. I'm just going to ignore that. And I was like, bitch! You better do the right thing for once in your life. I swear to God, you better do the right thing for once in your life. Reunite these 2 bitches together. Let these 2 bitches' spirits rest in peace, please. Like, especially after everything you put your child through with, like, forcing him to have a kid and, like, sexually assaulting him indirectly. You need to write this one thing. You need to do right by him one time. Just one time. Just do this one right thing, please, dear Lord. And I kept watching the minutes tick down, because I read this on audio, by the way, and it was like 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left, 1 minute left, and their spirits still can't rest. At the very end, Patroclus is able to convince Theseus to have Achilles' tomb paint his legacy as one of love for his man instead of one of war and death. And finally, their urns are united, and they can be reunited together in peace. And I was like, and I'm not kidding here. I'm not kidding here. The very last sentence, the last sentence of this book is what saves it from being a tragedy. The last sentence of this book is what classifies it as a romance, because their spirits do find each other, and they are able to go off into the underworld together and live off happily ever after. And it's like, thank God! Thank God! Oh my God! Miss Madeline Miller, you are paying for my therapy bills after that suspense. Girl, I was literally on my knees in front of my phone sobbing. That has never happened with a book before. Like, okay, sometimes there are books that will get me to cry, you know, just like a little few tears, but this one had me full on sobbing. It was like fucking Niagara Falls up here. Like, oh my God, it was so good. It was so enjoyable. I loved it so fucking much. I really, really did. And even aside from that part, the very last part of it, the whole last, section of it, the last, 2 or 3 hours, had me weeping when I was, thinking back on everything that had happened, because it didn't have to be this way. They didn't have to die. Oh my God. Neither of them had to die. The war could have ended so much sooner, and they could have lived a happy, long life together, if not for the pride and arrogance of man. Of a whole bunch of men. Not just Achilles, but a whole bunch of men. Oh my God. They could have lived happily ever after with a long happy life, if not for the fucking arrogance and pride of men. Oh my God. I love this book so much. Oh my God. The writing is masterful. I love the characters. I love the plot. The beautifully tragic and tragically beautiful ending made this a favorite of the year for me. And that says a lot. Like I said 100 times before, I'm not really a Greek mythos fan. I've never shown any interest in it. So when I went into this, I was thinking okay, if it's a 3-star, I will be happy. This is my favorite book of the whole year so far. Quite honestly, and I was not expecting that. Okay, yeah, it's glorified fan fiction of the Iliad. I don't care. I don't care. Sue me. And you know what? I've never read the Iliad. I probably never will, honestly. But I just know that Homer was ended. I'm sorry. Him and Madeline are gonna meet up in the afterlife, and he's gonna be like, damn, you kind of ate me up in my own game, Miss Miller. You did. Wow. Next up is Star Wars Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising by Timothy Zahn. This adult sci-fi explores the origins of Grand Admiral Thrawn during his time with the Chiss Ascendancy. When the Ascendancy is attacked by an alien force, Thrawn and his allies are tasked with finding the culprit and bringing them to justice. But as he goes deeper and deeper into the investigation, he discovers that not all is what it seems, and there may be even bigger forces out in space that the Chiss don't know about just yet. I DNF'd this one, unfortunately. Here's the thing, though. I'll put a caveat next to the DNF. If I could get this on audio at my library, I'd probably continue it. Here's the thing, okay? I generally do prefer Star Wars books on audio, just because for some reason I understand them a lot better. I can visualize them a lot better. I can understand, all the planet names and the ship names and keep track of the names better. I can understand what's going on a lot better when it's on audio. But especially with Timothy Zahn's writing, his writing itself, When I read his books, the words just seem to jumble together a lot, and I'm left vaguely understanding what's going on, but feeling kind of emotionless and also kind of vaguely confused, even though I know what's going on. That's not a dig at his writing, by the way. Like, I'm not saying he's a bad writer. He's not. He's a good writer. I listened to Thrawn Treason on audio and was able to understand it a lot better compared to the other two, well, now three, I guess, Thrawn books that I've read, and had a really good time with it. It's just something with the way my brain processes information that, like, reading the Thrawn books, like, physically, it leaves me, like, vaguely confused, even though I know what's going on. Like, for some reason, my brain just kind of doesn't really process them that well. I don't know why. So, yeah, I DNF'd it for that reason, but if I could get this on audio, I'd probably continue it, honestly. Next is The Only Light Left Burning by Eric J. Brown. This YA post-apocalyptic romance is the sequel to All That's Left in the World, which I read earlier this year, and you can hear all about how much I absolutely adore it in my spring wrap-up video. Anyway, after the events of the first book, Andrew and Jamie are currently living in a colony down in the Florida Keys, but they're having, disagreements about what to do with the future. Like, Jamie wants to go back up north to their cabin from the first book where they started out their adventure, and Andrew wants to stay here in Florida with, a community and build a community with survivors and all that kind of stuff. So they're having, like, disagreements about what to do now coming up in the future. When a hurricane strikes Florida and old enemies come a-calling, though, the two boys must put aside their differences to survive yet another major adventure, journeying across the wasteland of the U.S. with a new group of friends by their side. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I might drop it down to a pure 3. I don't know. Here's the thing. When I originally scripted this video, I was like, okay, 4.5, something like that. But then as I kept thinking about it, I was like, kind of want to drop it down a little bit. And I might drop it down a little bit more soon. I don't know. Like, it's around a 3.5 range for me. I enjoyed it well enough. I did. I enjoyed it well enough. Not nearly as much as the first book, honestly. But I was present while reading this. I was present. I was mindful. I was demure. I was here. Okay? I was. I don't think this book necessarily needed to exist. And it's perfectly fine if you read the first one and treat it as a standalone, but that isn't to say that this book shouldn't exist. I do think this one justifies its existence in a way some other follow-up books that I've read in the past just don't. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what I liked about this book, and then we'll talk about the things that didn't really work well for me. Okay, I like the overall adventure once again. This ruined wasteland of America is just kind of fun to explore, honestly. Like, and see what's left, what's not, how people survive, etc. Like, it's really just fun to explore. I like the new side characters, and having more personalities on the trip was fun and also a really good way to keep this book from feeling too much like the first one. If it just had been Andrew and Jamie traveling through America once again, it would have felt very, very, very similar to the first one in a way that I just wouldn't like. So I like that there were, like, a lot of new characters here. Well, too many new characters, honestly, but I like that there were new characters. I, of course, liked the fall of this white supremacist colony, Fort Caroline, that was the biggest threat of all in both books. So I really liked seeing that colony get, like, destroyed, basically, and also seeing their head guy get exactly what he deserved. Like, that was very, very pleasing. Like, yes, down with the white supremacists. I love that. And the ending was fine, we got our happy ending, of course, because it's a romance. You have to have a happy ending for it to be classified as a romance. And I like the natural compromise of the living situation disagreement thing that satisfied both Andrew's desire to be part of a community and Jamie's desire to be left the fuck alone in a cabin. Now, speaking of things that didn't get properly resolved in this book, let's talk about the entire third act of this book. Now, I could detail exactly what went wrong with each thing that got resolved or didn't get resolved, but we don't have time for that because this is not a video dedicated to this book, and I know none of you care enough about this book to hear about me talk about all of that, because none of you have read it, I'm sure. So let's just summarize what felt lacking in the third act of this book. Number 1, the takedown of the big bad evil Fort Caroline chasing the kids throughout the book fell so quickly, and its fall felt so anticlimactic. Like, come on now. Like, this is the major big threat of the first and second book, and yeah, that whole thing just felt very anticlimactic. Number 2, major side character Henry that acts as a motivating goal in both of these books, and also plays a notable role in pushing the couple together in both books. She dies off screen. Why? Why? Excuse me? We couldn't have had a proper death scene for Henry. Like, this is a major supporting character, and we just kill her off screen. Excuse me? Anyway, number 3, the nomadic colony that the gang joins up with for a large percentage of this book is like Thanos snapped out of existence once we no longer need them. I mean, yeah, it can be assumed that they take over the area that the evil Fort Caroline once inhabited, but still, a proper send-off would have been nice for the nomads. Number 4, there was literally no reason to keep Andrew and Jamie apart for like the last 10% of this book. The only reason this is done is to have a callback to how they met in the first book, when they eventually do reunite at the very end of this one. But even the characters themselves admit that the gag was not worth it, so why should I think it was worth it? You know, like, other things that didn't quite work for me. I know I'm going on and on, but other things that didn't quite work for me. 1, all of the fighting and miscommunication. I said that the first book finally made me like my least favorite trope of miscommunication, and that still remains true. This one also does a bit of miscommunication, and while I do understand the reasons why Jamie kept a few things hidden from Andrew, this one still had the feeling of, ugh, just be honest and tell each other things. Just have a conversation, please. That all miscommunication plotlines leave me with. And while I understand the arguments that these two have all throughout the book about living in a community versus living alone, and Jamie becoming like an angry, revenge-seeking person because of fear of being hunted down and whatnot, and Andrew telling him to like, like get over yourself and just, live without fear and blah, 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 blah. I also just really don't like it when books have the main ship fight constantly. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't like it when a romance has the main couple fight a lot. Like, it never got super toxic. There was always moments of them being friendly or trying to be friendly to, like, try and balance things out, and I always understood both sides of the arguments that they were having, but it's just like, did we need the main couple fighting and bickering with each other all throughout the book? Like, did we? Did we now? Like, the fighting literally only stopped at, like, the 60 to 70% mark when they were separated. And then they don't even get reunited until the final chapter, so pretty much the entire time they were fighting with each other, and it's like, did we really need that? Like, again, did we really need that? 2, there were way too many new side characters. There were. By the end of the first book, there was like 3 main people in the group. Andrew, Jamie, and their friend Cara, who they met in Fort Caroline and helped her escape because she was being abused. In this book, however, the group expands, so when we leave the Florida Keys to start traveling again, we've got Andrew, Jamie, Cara, this punk dude named Rocky Horror, Henry's daughter Amy, and her daughter Henrietta. Granted, Henrietta doesn't really count because she's a baby, so of course she's coming along. Romance author Daphne, this other lady named Kelly, this middle schooler named Taylor, this 7-year-old named the Kid, because no one knows his name, so they just call him the Kid, and 5 other unnamed orphans, and they go unnamed because they literally do not affect the plot whatsoever. Also, in addition to that, when we later join up with the Nomads later in the book, we also add in these 2 siblings named Nikki and Jamar. So that's like 17 people to the group at its peak. And so we've got like 5 billion new characters. Like, and here's the thing too. The book really wants you to get invested in everyone. Like, literally everyone. And I simply cannot do that. I simply cannot do that, okay? I simply cannot do that. I think the best example of this book really wanting you to feel emotionally connected to every damn person that we ever come across within these pages is towards the beginning of this book. We're in the Florida Keys, the hurricane is hitting, we have this lady, and we also have this group of other kids. and this lady is like Andrew's boss at this point, and this other group of kids that she's in charge of, he's also supposed to be in charge of, low key. Okay, so we've got that. And they all drown. They all die in the hurricane. Okay, we've known them for like, I don't know, like 5 chapters. They all drown, they all die. The book really wants you to be sad that these people died. Because Andrew constantly, in his POV chapters, is like constantly thinking about these people that died at the very beginning of the book. And he's always like crying and having mental breakdown and being like, oh my god, these people that died, they drowned, oh my god, I'm so sad, I feel so lost without them, blah 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 blah. And it's like, I'm sorry, but like from the reader's perspective, I don't know these people. They're all fictional. Yes, it's out that they died, but they're all fictional. I don't know them. I didn't have time to know them. From my perspective, it's just kind of like that Wendy Williams clip of like, oh, she died? Oh, she passed away? Oh. Okay, anyway. Like, like, I'm sorry. That's just kind of how it is. But the book really wants you to be invested in every single goddamn person that is on the screen. And it's like, I can't. There's too many people. I'm sorry. There are way too many people. I'm sorry. I can't get invested in every single person. The author can, because the author knows these people inside and out. But me as the reader, I don't know these people inside and out. So I just can't get attached to every single person that you want me to. So yeah, anyway. And after all of that, I didn't mean to go on this long, but I did, sorry. But after all of that, despite my criticisms, I don't think that this was bad, nor was it unenjoyable. I had a nice, decent time with it. I had a nice, decent time with it. But it really doesn't hold a candle to the first book. I'm sorry, it doesn't. But I am interested in the author's other books, so you'll probably see it pop up at some point. I don't know when, maybe next year, but you'll see it pop up at some point. Alrighty, we're finally moving into August now, starting with The Maze Runner by James Dashner. This YA dystopia is about this boy named Thomas who wakes up in this maze with his memory wiped. He's in this all-boys society where they're trying to figure out how to get out of this maze that they're all trapped in and survive against the monsters that lurk within it. Soon after, for the first time ever, a girl shows up in this place, and soon Thomas will learn about her and him and how they're the key to figuring out how to escape the maze. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, I read this for a video. It's my last posted video where I read a few books that are like labeled as like rip-off Hunger Games books. So this is part of that video. So if you want to hear my full thoughts, go watch my previous video. In short, it's basically watered down Hunger Games aimed at boys. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say. The only other thing that I can say is, dear Lord, please take all of the Mary Sue allegations from Captain Marvel and Rey Skywalker and throw them onto Thomas the Maze Runner. My god, this dude literally just gets the plot handed to him, not once, but twice. So unserious, like it was so unserious, but I will say this did hold my attention and I was mildly interested in what was going on, so I didn't hate my time with it. Like, I didn't hate my time with it, okay? Next up is This Is How You Lose the Time War by, forgive me for pronouncing these names wrong, Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone. Again, I apologize if I pronounced their names wrong. You've probably heard about this from Twitter or TikTok over the past year, but if you haven't, this is an adult romance novella about these 2 time travelers that work for different government agencies that are at war with each other. They start leaving taunting notes for each other to find throughout time, but soon those taunts turn into something more romantic. It's basically time-traveling Juliet and Juliet. And unfortunately, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. This just wasn't for me. It just wasn't. I found it very boring and just having to go with the flow of things. I wasn't confused. I just couldn't get invested in the characters or the story. Like, when towards the end, Red was doing this whole elaborate time plot to free her and Blue and get them their happily ever after with, like, defying the agencies that they work for and faking her death and blah, 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 I just couldn't really bring myself to care about what was going on and just wanted it to be over at that. If this was longer than 4 hours, I would have DNF'd it. I'm sorry, I would have DNF'd it. I don't care if it's on audio. If it had been any longer than 4 hours, I would have DNF'd it. I can recognize that the writing itself is very pretty, it's very demure, it's very mindful, And I'm not saying that this was terrible or that it's not worth the hype at all. I'm just not the right audience for it. I'm really not. This book cemented for me that I am just personally not a literary fiction girly. I'm not. I am a commercial fiction bitch. I am. And there's nothing wrong with literary fiction, it's just not for me. And this book cemented that for me. Next up is How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This YA fantasy novella is a short story collection set before, during, and after the events of the Cruel Prince / Folk of the Air trilogy, told from the love interest Cardan's point of view. And I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is exactly what I expect out of a novella. It's not needed to fully understand or enjoy the main books, but it is an extra pleasant side story for big fans of the series. I wasn't head over heels for it, but I liked it. I did. Next up is King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I told you it was going to come around. This YA fantasy is the first book in the King of Scars duology and the 6th book in the Grishaverse. This book takes us back to Ravka to follow Shadow and Bone characters King Nikolai and General Zoya as they investigate mystical mysteries that are happening across the country, rumors of the Darkling's return, and the growing threat of the shadow demon living inside Nikolai one day overtaking him. There's also another plot following Nina from Six of Crows as she works undercover in the enemy country of Fredra in an underground network to liberate the Grisha that live there. I enjoyed this, as I do all of the Grishaverse books. I liked it being focused more on the Shadow and Bone side of things in Ravka again, because I'm sorry, I personally like the Shadow and Bone trilogy more than the Six of Crows duology. Unpopular opinion, don't shoot me, don't sue me, don't blah blah blah. Don't kill me. I'm sorry, I personally like the Shadow and Bone trilogy more, so I was very excited that this focused more on those sorts of characters. I agree with the people that say the Nikolai Zoya plotline and the Nina plotline felt like two different books instead of one cohesive story, though I did like both plotlines, so it wasn't ever a slog to get through. Interestingly though, in the first half of this book, I liked the Nikolai Zoya plotline more than the Nina plotline, but in the second half of this book, I liked hearing what Nina and Zach were up to, as opposed to what Nikolai and Zoya were up to. The third act of this book is where I kind of lost a few points for me, because the thing is, I don't think writing big climactic battles is really Bardugo's strong suit. I'm sorry, I don't. Every time she's written a big climactic fight on the fold, in Shadow and Bone, in Ruin and Rising, and now in this one, yeah, they all kind of felt lackluster, though granted this one was better than the ones in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, especially considering the effects they have on the world. Like all three of the fights have like big, huge effects for the plot and the world going forward, but the battles themselves always are like, okay, that happened, sure, okay, that happened. Now, when it comes to writing climaxes in like a spy mission / heist sort of way, like the Six of Crows books, oh, Miss Bardugo knows how to write a climax in that sort of sense. Like, she really, really does. Like, the climaxes in the Six of Crows duology, yeah, they were really, really good. The fairy ending twist, though, okay, I knew it was going to happen because I spoiled myself reading the fan wiki, but still, when it happened, when the ending twist happened, I was like, why? Why do we need this? Like, is the return of Voldemort really needed, especially since it seems we've got like a whole world war on our hands right now? But overall, I really did enjoy this, and I am looking forward to reading the final, well, for now, hopefully there will be more in the future, the final, for now, Grisha book. Next up, we have Divergent by Veronica Roth. This is a YA dystopia set in this world where society is divided into Hogwarts houses. I'm sorry, I meant factions. This world is divided into factions. It follows this girl named Triss as she leaves her birth faction and joins another, and you follow her as she goes through this whole initiation competition to join the new faction, and just, do a bunch of typical teen things like make friends, find love, face bullies, learn to shoot people, etc., etc., etc. You know, just all in the days of a 16-year-old. Oh, there's also some random plot about political unrest and the factions maybe going to war with each other, but that's not really important until the end, you know, like that's not really important. I gave this a 1 out of 5 stars. It is probably my least favorite book of the year, honestly. I read it for the video that I read The Maze Runner into, you know, reading like quote-unquote rip-off Hunger Games books. So yeah, if you want my full, very dramatic, very ranty thoughts on this book, go watch my previous video, honestly. But in short, like I said, easily the worst book I've read and finished this year. A failure in writing, plot, character, and world building. Like, honestly, it's gonna be hard to top it, I think. It's gonna be really hard to top this one for the worst book of the year. But, you know, we've got 4 months left, so it's not impossible. Next is The Fifth Wave by Rick Vancey. This is a YA post-apocalyptic book about when aliens come and just kill nearly the entire human population. It follows this girl named Cassie, and it's about her trying to survive in this world day by day after her entire family is either dead or missing. And I DNF'd it. I've had this in the back of my mind for years, because the movie trailer used to come on TV, and I thought like, oh, that looks cool, and I want to go see it. I still haven't seen the movie, by the way. And I saw that it had a book, so I wanted to read the book too. And, you know, I just never got around to it until now, and yeah, it was disappointing. It was disappointing. I had it for one day. One day. It started out interesting. I was here for it. The main girl was just, you know, wandering around trying to survive the alien invasion as seemingly the last person on Earth. But, you know, I was still here for it. But then we kept going back in time to before the invasion and in the early days of it. And yeah, when we stayed in the past for several chapters at a time, I just quickly lost interest in it. I did. I'm sorry, I did. And also, there were like several weird comments being made in this book. Like, okay, comparing this fictional alien invasion to real-life events of the Vietnam War and the Hiroshima bombings, like, weird. Making an offhand comment about Native Americans handing over Manhattan for a few strands of beads, quote-unquote. Weird. And at one point, the main girl has a breakdown and says all she wants at that moment is to be able to have her crush's babies. Weird. Do I need to explain why any of these comments are fucking weird? They are. Do I need to explain why they're weird? Anyway, so, yeah, I just skipped around. Nothing really reignited my interest, and the ending made me roll my eyes too. So, back to the library you go, just as quickly as you came. And the final book for this video is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is an adult romance about writers. This lady, January, moves into a beach house for the summer, and as it turns out, both her and the next-door neighbor guy are professional authors struggling to write their next book. To get them out of their ruts, they challenge each other to switch genres and write a book that they normally wouldn't write. So the main guy, Gus, he is a prestigious literary author, and so he's going to switch genres and be writing a fluffy romance book. Whereas January, the main girl, is a fluffy romance author, and she's going to now switch genres and write a prestigious literary novel. And, of course, it's a romance, so all of this spending time together has one thing lead to another, and you can figure out the end result by that point. And this is also a 5 out of 5. It's a favorite of the year for me. Now, like I said, I'm working on a video reading Emily Henry's most well-known books and working through all of those, so I'll save most of my thoughts for that video, but I love this one. I love the banter between the two main characters. I love the messy drama with January's family. Also, I have to say, most of the time I really hate books about authors and writers and whatnot, because I find that most of the time the author MC is just basically like a self-insert for the author of the book and what they want their career to be and what they think their writing is. Like, I always find books about authors to be like, I am this prestigious, amazing, great author, and I have this wondrous career, and oh no, I haven't written a book in years, but don't worry, my fans and my agent and my publisher especially, they're just dying to buy my next book. They are waiting with bated breath to buy my next masterpiece. That's honestly the vibe I get from most books that are about authors, but I didn't get that from this book. I really, really didn't. January and Gust felt like just normal people. Thank God. They were just like normal, likable people. So, Emily Henry, for that alone, is mother. Like, she really, really is. So, this was just a really nice way to wrap up the summer with a literal beach read. So, yeah, another pen. I had to make it. And that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you know when I upload next. And also leave a comment about any of these books if you have read them, and also tell me what you have been reading this summer. I would really like to know because I am nosy. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.